I see, hold it. I see so there's news people on here, guys, all over, just, heads up. Um,
All right.
All right. Yeah, you guys are ready to let people in? All right, let's go.
Going to launch those polls Q&A to let us also information founder, or if you want to connect with them.
Hi, good evening, everyone. As you come in the room, if you can make sure to mute yourself, I hear a number of voices. So please, thank you very much. We'll get started. I know there's a number of folks still waiting to be admitted. Prentice?
That shows how much of a concern it is. It's bad.
Yeah, Prentice, are you gonna admit the folks in the waiting room? Still. Okay. So we will get started now. So good evening, everyone. Again, as you come in, just make sure you're muted. This is a meeting directly in response to a mass shooting that occurred on 31st and Rhodes, well, actually technically Cottage. And we wanted to be here to talk about a long-term response, but also to hear your questions, your concerns. We've got the two commanders from the 1st District and the 2nd District here, as well as Miss Sakia Chanel from CAPS. And we are prepared to answer your questions. My name is Sophia King. I'm the alderman of the 4th Ward. I'm honored to be here this evening, and my chief of staff is here as well, Princess Butler. We're going to just start right away with hearing from the police commanders in this particular area. Just for edification, the 4th Ward shares the 1st District and the 2nd District police districts in the ward. And 31st Street is actually the boundary for the 1st Police District and the 2nd Police District. The 2nd Police District is south of 31st Street, and the 1st Police District is north of 31st Street, just for everyone's edification. But we have the commanders for both. They understand that there's border, and they communicate with each other. So what I want to start off with is just a response and a statement from each of the commanders. I will let whichever commander wants to go first, but just to introduce them, we've got Commander Joshua Wallace for the 2nd District, and then we have Commander David Harris, formerly a captain in the 2nd District, and who now commander in the 1st District, so he may be familiar to some of you. So without further ado, I will hand it over to both of you. You can draw straws for first.
I'll go first. Good evening. Commander Wallace is the alderman introduced me. So I have the 2nd District. I think one thing, I just want to make one thing clear when it comes in regards to 31st Street Beach. There's a dividing line that goes down right through basically Pier 31. So there's different sides. Obviously, there's different sides that we both are responsible for, command over. And so what we're doing now, or what our plan is, and it's already in place, part of the plan, because we have these crowds that congregate on the beach, or they come off Pier 31. They're both on both our sides. So we plan together, and we basically escort groups off of the beach. The beach closes at 11. Curfew is at 10 o'clock for all teens 18 and younger. So we escort them off the beach down 31st Street. And so that's where the problem tends to begin, as we escort people off. We have an auxiliary parking lot on the south side. We also have the parking lot at 31st and Cottage on the north side. So we're working with the people who lease that parking lot on the south side in regards to signage, and actually ensuring that that parking lot is closed on a nightly basis, because that parking lot being left open 24 hours leads to congregating in that parking lot on our side. We also then we move further down the street, 31st and Rose. We have the playground there and the play lot there. So we've heard the concern about, or not having presence there at night when these crowds let out, and where they end up over the bridge at 31st Street, whether it be on the first district side or the second district side. So we have a plan in place to best to have cars positioned there to continue to escort people as far away as possible, because we have a CTA. The CTA bus will stop running on 31st Street at 10 o'clock. So therefore, there's no transportation to put people on to get them to King Drive, to get them to Michigan. So we want to take people as far as we can to where they're able to catch public transportation. In addition to that, also, we are working with rideshare to get the Uber and Lyft locations repositioned to make it easier for people to call on rideshare and get a ride to get out the area, faster. In addition to that, also, we do know that there is parking on 31st Street the signs seem to be ignored on a routine basis. We're conducting traffic missions on 31st Street on all three of our shifts in an effort to address the ongoing parking issues on 31st Street. That's a little of what we're doing as the second district side. I'll let Commander Harris speak on what they're doing on the first district side, and then as we answer questions, we can tell you how collaboratively we're coming together on a daily call and discussing last night's activities and what we plan on for the day ahead. So, Captain Harris or Commander Harris.
Yes, good evening. I'm glad everyone can make it this evening. So our plan on the first district side is pretty much going to mirror what Commander Wallace just explained to you, because we're seeing the same issues. And like Commander Wallace said, we're in constant communication to keep our plans working together. So I personally met with the Park District this morning, and they're partnering with us in getting this plan together. One of the things we're improving is the lighting situation on the beach. Also, we'll be using the PA system on the beach to alert the people using the beach of when these parking lots close. For instance, the parking lot at 31st and Cottage Grove closes at 8 p.m. So we'll be alerting anybody who is parked in that lot, starting probably about 7:30, that lot is closing, and we will be enforcing, starting with parking tickets, then tows. We will be utilizing a light truck to illuminate that lot, and also we'll have a temporary camera system on 31st Street. As needed. Like I said, we'll be doing traffic missions jointly with the second district, and we work in tandem on the beach, as Commander Wallace explained.
thank you, commanders. I appreciate you. Again, I want to acknowledge Miss Kia Chanel, who's on the call as well from CAPS. And anytime you want to jump in, feel free. I won't put you on the spot, but just know that we appreciate you being here and appreciate your service as well. Couple things. So I'm going to take questions and live questions from the residents here. What I'd like for you to do is to use the raise your hand function. If you are on video, I see a number of folks who've joined by phone, but if you're on, video, I'm just going to ask you to, open your video and have your question. I'm going to ask a couple of questions to take personal privilege in the front, just to.
Hey, Alderman, I don't mean to
ask.
interrupt you, but I'm on the call.
Oh, okay. Snooks, I think, is that,
Yes, as it's
yeah,
talking, yes.
okay, I
I'm on the
recognize.
call, ma'am.
All right, well, feel free to jump in if there are park districts. The head of security for the park district is also on the phone, and I'll allow you actually to go now if you want to talk about any things that you have implemented either since this incident or right before that you want folks on the call to know about on the Zoom.
We have met with the police department and went over a very tedious plan to get this resolved. And the plan is in place, and thank God for the two commanders and the chiefs that are helping us. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So the question that I have is, one that we've talked about before. How will security, how will we keep that parking lot safe? And, please just talk about details and time, as well as kind of the park space on, the west side of the bridge where, not only when you let close the beaches, but when, people are leaving at different times, they're coming and going, residents feel vulnerable. So how will we keep them safe? Can you talk about that specifically?
Well, it's
Is
gonna.
that direct?
It's going to take presence. So we're committing to, at least the second district is committing to having a vehicle over there during the peak times. Outside of the peak times, as we mentioned, with our traffic missions on 31st Street, that keeps a police presence between King and the beach. Also, our bike units are going to be out there as well. That it honestly, it comes down to mere presence. I think that's the best way to combat that. And we're going to do something that we call blue light missions, having our lights activated. So it's an obvious presence of the police as a deterrent. But we're going to also need to have our officers out the car as well, engaging. And I know, again, walking back and forth from that parking lot or walking back and forth back into the neighborhood, I understand the citizens' concerns. So we're hoping that just the mere presence and the enforcement activity will solve that problem for us.
Yes, just echo Commander Wallace in regards to that parking lot. Again, with the verbal announcements that the lot's being closed. And I'm confident that with any enforcement that we do in ticketing and ultimately towing, we'll send a strong message to people that park in that lot that it's needs to be vacated after 8 p.m.
I said one.
Can people make sure they remain muted, just so that we can hear everyone? What in the parking lot, will we have someone there all the time? When, how will that be, as well as the presence kind of in the park there. Mr. Snooks, maybe you can talk about that. I think, I remember when, the teens were coming the first night and the second night. I know that there was a report, and I saw a couple Facebook reports of kind of all the presents that we had there. And I know that that came from, different districts as well. And, while we appreciated the presence, I would say it would be nice to have a balance, right? More presence, kind of more spread out, more focused in certain areas, like, the parking lot, kind of walking over the bridge in the park on the west side, as well as distributed throughout the lakefront area. Can we see a kind of more balanced, approach of presence going forward? How will that work in terms of, available officers? Can you speak to that a bit? And then Snooks, just feel free to weigh in.
Oh, yes, it's definitely like we've keep saying, this partnership on 31st Street will definitely, as far as the parking lot goes, we will have a presence in that lot during the peak hours. On non-peak hours, our traffic missions will take up from having a fixed post there to monitor that lot. I personally drove by there several times today, and earlier in the day, there's nobody in that lot, so there's no need for us to sit in a vacant lot, but we are constantly monitoring it through our traffic missions and also through our cameras.
Okay, so just lastly, we'll go to some questions from people with hands up. What are peak times? What's considered peak times?
More towards the evening. That's when the lots are utilized the most. That's when we get our largest presence at the beach.
So like from 6 to, that lot's, you said stays open until 8. So, when are we talking? 5 to 10 on the lot? And I just
It's
want
gonna
to,
it's gonna differ every day. It's gonna look different on the weekends, obviously, because people will be out earlier. And the weekdays, that will be, again, through our monitoring of the situation, whatever time we need to be there, we'll be there.
right. Okay, I will take questions from people with their hands up first, and then we'll go to some questions in the chat. And like I said, if people can make sure that they remain muted or quiet, so that we can hear the questions, that would be great. There's somebody on a fire tablet, and your hands are up first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can. Go ahead.
The lot is not the issue. I live in 501. I'm in the 501 East 32nd. Only been here a year. And first place is the issue.
Say that again. What place is the issue?
31st place. They're not in that lot. They're on this street. I literally sat on my balcony until 1:30 in the morning last Wednesday, and they were out here dancing on top of people's cars. They were dancing on top of the police cars, because it was like 12 police cars out there. They were dancing on top of the police cars. The policemen got out of their cars and was standing there. These young children did not care. These girls were twerking in front of police officers. They were on top of cars. They were in cars that was not theirs, because they all walked from the lake. They did not care. They stayed out there. I went in my home at 1:30 in the morning, but they were out there to 2:30 in the morning. After a while, the police just left. Those kids were out there when they left. And then one of the cars, it was an SUV. They had 4 kids on top of the roof, 2 kids on top of the hood, girls hanging out of the passenger windows, and they were speeding from the building, from the 400 building in between the 501 building, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, while a cop car sat out here and gave out tickets to people that were too close to the stop sign and never said anything to them. So my thing is, you can close the parking lots, you can block off, but these kids are in the streets. And if they're not being held accountable for anything, then how is it gonna stop? They did that Wednesday, they did that Thursday, and then unfortunately, the shooting happened on Friday, and it seemed like it was inevitable because they had done this for the last 3 days. And then now they did it again the other night. So they don't care. If they're not being held accountable for anything, they don't care, because it's a large police presence. It's like cars, but they don't care.
Right. Thank you. Didn't get your name, but I'll just say, Ms. Ma'am. Thank you,
That's
ma'am. I will allow the commanders to respond to that. I wasn't aware of incidents with young folks around police cars and dancing, twerking, whatever you want to call it, but it sounds like just utter disrespect and disregard for authority. So I do agree that we need to hold young people accountable. So commanders, I don't know if you were aware of those incidents leading up to, it sounds like, the mass shooting. I do disagree. The parking lot is still an issue. We've had several incidents in that parking lot. And so, but we can handle several things. So if you will just respond to that, I appreciate it. Thanks.
So, I mean, we understand what these young, I don't even know what these teenagers are doing. We deploy our police, we get them where we need them to be. We've been discussing how we approach this, because I know the concern is the age of these young men and women, about putting their hands on them, the accusations, things of that nature. But we've had to have these discussions about enforcing the law regardless of the age, enforcing curfew regardless of how you feel about enforcing curfew, having to take somebody back to their home or things of that nature. It comes down to an enforcement issue, and so those are discussions we've been having with our staff about the proper way to enforce. Because here's the thing, as the woman stated, if it doesn't get addressed, it's going to continue to keep happening. So these are all things that these meetings we've had in the last week with our staff and our supervisors about enforcement actions, because if we can put all the plans in place in the world, but if we're not enforcing what needs to be enforced in these plans, we're going to be right back here next year having the same discussion, or there's going to be another mass shooting in a parking lot. So, I appreciate you bringing all of that to my attention. I wasn't aware of that particular incident, but we are aware that the enforcement needs to be ramped up to send that message that we're not going to tolerate this.
Yeah, and I know it's you alluded to, kind of a trick bag, as young folks would say. You're tasked with, holding young people accountable. The next thing it'll be said that you're violating their rights and all kinds of things. And I know it's a precarious situation, but I think, we do have to both hold folks accountable, honor their civil liberties, but we have to hold people accountable. So I appreciate that. I hope, that there's obviously direction and thought as to how we're going to do that. But I do know that we do have to hold folks accountable. So I appreciate that feedback. Next we have Ms. Hairston.
Good evening and thank you. Alderman King for holding this. Last time we met with you, well, my comments are twofold, both regarding parking, because it does have to do with congregating and moving people along. I believe one of the commanders mentioned enforcement of parking or no parking on 31st Street. That I wasn't aware of, but last time we met with you, we talked about seasonal parking restrictions.
Yes, ma'am.
We've not seen anything come of that, so I'd like to hear where that stands, because if we don't have, yes, the parking lot way down on by Lakeshore Drive is one thing. And also the one across from 31st Street where the shooting was, but the fewer people we have congregating in the neighborhood would help the issue that the young lady that just spoke about.
Mhm.
If there's no parking on 31st Street, there shouldn't be, the cars shouldn't be there. Unless they've got a sticker. If there's no parking on 31st Street, that reduces the amount of people in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so I appreciate that question, and we do have a response, and we certainly do want to strike a balance, between the public's ability to use a very public amenity, which is the beach, and streets, which belong to the public as well, but also balancing that with the residents' right to have a peaceful evening and not be disturbed by noise constantly. So we had to introduce an ordinance, which we did and just passed out of this city council. And so those signs will be up soon. I will allow my chief of staff to give the particulars of the area in which there will be seasonal parking in this particular area, and when those signs may be up and going. Mr. Butler, can you kind of weigh in and give some detail and color to that,
Absolutely.
please?
So the area for the seasonal parking will be from 31st to 32nd and Road. It'll surround the 600 building, condo building in that area. And we have developed a new sign that once it's implemented, we hope to have the installation happen soon in July. But I will show the community what the new signage will say, so you can be informed of what that may look like in the future. This is the new signage that will be along roads and around the 600 building. As you can see, we have the seasonal parking from April 1st to November 1st, and it'll be from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. We want to make the signage as clear as possible to let people know this will be restricted parking, except for those living in the area that will have the permits. And you can pick the permits up from our office. The office, we do not charge for the permits. It's not like other restricted parking. This is free of charge to the residents in the area.
I hope that answers the question. It should be, so now that it's law, it's just a matter of them putting the signs. And Prentice, you hope, by early July, we'll have the signs?
We're going to confirm with CDOT officials to make sure we have the exact timeline. Because they have the new signs, Tovall Frazier, who was in contact with CDOT, is going to get back with me about the exact timeline for installation. And we'll make sure we put the information in a newsletter to keep the community updated about when the installation is scheduled to take place.
Okay.
Thank you. Keeping in mind that 4th of July is going to be a big weekend. I realize that there are operational and logistical issues, but if there's anything that could be done by the beginning of July, before the 4th of July holiday weekend, that would be huge.
We hear you, just as we heard you here. And Prentice, if you can shoot an email off to,
Absolutely.
try and get some fire under the feet there, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you for that. And also, we've got, so seasonal parking is something that we implemented, based on the bridges and obviously the seasonal traffic that comes into communities that are impacted by their proximity to, these huge amenities. So we are definitely listening and thank you for that input. And we also appreciate other block clubs who had to be a part of kind of the initial trial and error to help us get to, better signage, better timing,
Thank you
better
very much.
enforcement. Thank you. Now we have Miss, I don't know if it's Ms. or Mr. Campbell, but Tony Campbell.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Miss Tony Campbell. Thank you for holding this meeting. And I also live in 501, and I concur with the previous caller who talked about the people on 32nd Place. One of the very disturbing things is also, I've seen them out there with children, little toddlers, and they're just in the street. And the presence is there. I see the blue lights, but nothing is done. And what I also want to know is exactly what are the rulings about enforcing the curfew laws. Now, I think they said that the curfew, excuse me, is at 10 o'clock. If they're going to make an announcement about parking lots closing, there should be an announcement about curfew. And what can the police do? Now, I heard them say about taking the children home. I don't understand why a child breaking a curfew law gets to be taken home. I would think they would be taken to 35th Street and held there until the parents come and pick them up. And I think parents that have to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to come pick up their children would be less likely to allow them to just run. But I don't know what the laws are and how policemen's hands are tied regarding curfew, because the problem is the teenagers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. I think the commanders agree with you, but can you respond to the response to curfew, commanders? Is it a trip home or is it a trip to the station? What's the?
It can be a combination of both. My concern is having an officer off the street longer than he has to be. Taking a child to his parent is quicker than taking him to the station and waiting for the parent to show up, or trying to get a hold of the parent. You're more likely to get a hold of the parent when you go there and you knock on their door and wake them up and hand them their child than you are if you bring them to the police station and have them make, multiple phone calls to try and wake a parent up via telephone. So we want to get the child off the street, get them home to their parents. We want to get the officer back in service quicker.
Is there even another combination where the officer can drop them off at the station and have whoever's at the station, be there with the teen so that their officers can get back to the street? I think there's a combination. I think there's something to parents having to come pick up their kids.
No, I completely agree, but it goes to having the staffing in the building to do such a thing. The staff in the building, obviously they work the front desk.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. McGee.
First of all, thank you, both commanders and from the Park District and also Alderman and Prentice for bringing this meeting together in Mel Monroe. Some of the ideas or things that have been brought up and resolved so far, I think, thank you very much. Those things were actually brought up in the BEAT meeting on 2/12. I think that's correct. BEAT meeting 2/12. But what we would like to see is the actual written plan between all the parties so that when we don't see something, we can say, okay, here's what we expected, but without it being written down and just, it gets fluctuated. Just so you know, the incident that happened on Friday, the shooting on the lakefront, and probably some don't know, my commander would know, or his staff would know, that people left the beach after the shooting and flash mob the BP Amoco gas station and basically tore the place up to the tune of about $6,000 or $7,000 of damage. And I did send that clip out to Prentice and to the alderman. So this issue is very serious, and the issue of young people is very serious. And I do appreciate the commanders being out doing that. But I did have one thing to the person who made a statement and everybody who's on here. If you don't call the police, even though you see something, you handcuff the police's hands, because they have to have a call saying something happened in order for them to actually respond.
That is good to know.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. I see a Bob A.
Yes, good evening, Alderman and commanders and everyone else. Thank you for having this. I have a kind of question and comments for the commanders and also for you, Alderman King, and your staff. So I'll start with the police ones. From what I saw the night that the mass shooting happened, there were police already in the area. I mean, they were out in force at the beach along 31st Street. And I mean, that still happened. And they brought all resources, additional resources in. A helicopter was up. And so I know one of the commanders said that the plan is to just increase staffing and have, additional cars and everything. But I'm wondering how you would really prevent something, or what would be different than what was already done, because it was one of those nights where or days where they had one of those teen trends at the beach. So the officers were already out in force.
Yeah.
That's
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's one question. And then another, I mean, I'm sure most people have seen by now, it's circulated all over the world, the clip of the elderly gentleman in the car coming across 31st Street when those teens, one night when those teens were being pushed off of the beach. And I'm wondering, I mean, just pedestrian and vehicle safety, the streets weren't closed off. The police were in the area, and these teens, they did the same thing that someone described earlier, jumped on his car, dancing on his car, twerked. Luckily, an officer came by a few seconds later and kind of swept them off. But I mean, I'm sure that guy was tormented and terrorized. And I mean, things like that still happen, even with the police right there. So I'm wondering what the plan is in just adding more police. How is that really going to solve the problem?
Yeah.
So I can say this. So the shooting at 31st and Cottage Grove, the police were across the street when the shooting occurred. So, I mean, I will agree. It may not have been enough police there for them not to deter them to shoot, or it could have just been they didn't care that the police were there. But honestly, we live in an extremely brazen time where individuals do not care who's standing where if they feel they can get away with it. So we're going to continue to increase our footprint, continue to increase the resources that we can bring into the area. And all we can do is, be present. If somebody's willing to pull a gun on the police, on a citizen, and we're there, we're going to have to take the action that we can take if we're in the position to take that action. But, you're absolutely right. The police were right there and the shooting still occurred. But we have to continue to do our job regardless.
Okay, and I appreciate your candor there, Commander. A couple of other things. One is that Alderman King, a couple of summers ago, you made some changes with the park, closing it early, having it closed off so people couldn't drive up, although some people still will drive around those boulders and everything. But that helped out a lot in terms of the people congregating. And I heard Prentice say something about closing off some parts of roads, but I think even some additional streets in the area between 31st and 35th, because people park all throughout the Lake Meadows area on all of the side streets, 31st Place, east on 32nd, throughout all. So you might just consider expanding where those signs are going to go. And then I was also just wondering, Alderman King, when are the when is this project going to start? With one, the bridge being rebuilt. I understand that half of it will be closed off, and then also the micro resite. When is all that going to start, and how might that impact things?
Great. Couple of things. One, just thank you for your questions. I wanted to kind of expound on what the commanders were talking about. One way perhaps to mitigate some of the shootings is, they're on park and parkland where you cannot conceal and carry, but doing checks for guns. I know, Commander, you guys have talked about that you've confiscated a number of weapons. I think we have to continue to have have more robust checks, at the parking lot and as well as at the beach. So people have an expectation that they are going to be checked and not have guns. So I think continuing that would be a great idea. And I just want to put that out there to the public because that's something that we talked about privately. In terms of the, what was your question? I'm sorry, Bob.
It was about the construction. So the bridge is
Oh,
supposed
yes.
to be replaced, half of it. is
Yeah,
done, and then
Prentice, do you have a
the micro-
timeline on the bridge? Do we know?
We don't have an updated timeline. They're delayed. Alderman, we're scheduling a meeting with Commissioner Biaggi to get an update on that bridge and some other things in the community.
Yeah, so they are delayed. I know the infrastructure projects for the Michael Reeves project will also begin relatively soon, maybe even
Late summer, Alderman, they're talking about.
yes, I was going to say the third or fourth quarter. So that will begin, and so they'll be putting in a lot of the streetscapes and things like that first. So just so you know that, but the bridge, we'll have to circle back with the timeline for that. It was supposed to start this year. I still think it's going to begin this year, but I'm not sure exactly what month or quarter. So we'll circle back on that.
Okay, and just one last quick thing, and I'll let other people get in. I have noticed gang graffiti, and this is more so in the second district. It was painted over on the bridge, the 35th Street Bridge, but someone was bold enough to actually spray paint on the structure of the bridge, gang graffiti. I've seen it over by the former Griffin Funeral Home, and I submit tickets and all that when I see this stuff. But I'm wondering, is there an increased presence of gang activity in the area as well?
I'll let the police.
This is Commander Wallace. We haven't seen anything more than usual. We actually, when it comes to current gang violence, we've seen a bit of a downward trend, but we haven't seen any new emergence in the second district. If you can, if you're not getting a quick response with you submitting your tickets, if you could contact our CAPS office, we may be able to get a quicker response.
Yes, and additionally, the shooting that occurred, none of the victims are from the area as well. So these are all people that don't reside in the first or second district.
Thank
Right,
you for
thank you.
that. Miss Lena on the iPhone. I think you're muted. I can't hear you if you're speaking. Yeah, we can't hear you, Miss Lena. So just jump in when you think you can. I'm going to go on to Miss Sheila on the iPhone. And we'll come back. Miss Lena, if you get in, if you can just interject, let us know. Sheila? Can someone hear? Is it just me?
I can't hear all of it. I can't hear it.
Yeah, I don't know why the phones aren't coming in. So we'll have to come back to you, Miss Pilati?
Pilot.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So thank you. Obviously, my name is Janelle Pilot. First, I just want to acknowledge and thank everyone else for being in this space right now. I know we want to give a lot of acknowledgement to the aldermen, but also I want to just thank all of you as residents of the city for being present with us today. I am fairly new to the community, but obviously just as concerned. I am a Chicago resident, born and raised. But I have a couple of questions and comments about the incident that happened a couple of nights ago. One, in terms of the presence of the police, in terms of how that affects the residents as well. I feel like, I mean, this is just me speaking personally. I think the sirens are very obnoxious in just the way that they are pushing people out. I feel like it's a little bit animalistic. If we were being honest here, I think that there's a way to do that that is a little bit more humane. So, you know, obviously just want to take that into consideration in terms of we are speaking about children. And these are exactly that, they're children. And I think we also have to be very particular about how we deal with those situations. I completely understand that we don't want to over enforce, but we also don't want to under enforce. Into the space of just talking about this is the summertime. These kids have worked a lot in school. They, with COVID and everything else that has been going on, we really have to consider that when approaching these children and just speaking about them in a way that says, oh, they're jumping on cars, they're doing this. Well, where else are they going to go? Especially when they're being pushed out and forced into the public at 11:30 at night. And I understand that, but you know, it's nice out. So, and they just want to enjoy the city like I'm pretty sure everybody else does. So just want to ask in terms of, you know, support for children in times like this, because the summer is just getting started. So how are we going to support these children so that way they not only have a place to go, but so that way they feel cared about? I mean, I think them jumping on cars is ridiculous as well. But in reality, it's like they don't have respect for other people and their items and possessions because they aren't treated with that same respect. So in order for you to get respect, you have to learn how to give it, and they're not given that same respect. So, you know, I think that there's a way to treat the children in a way that is a little bit more humane, that's a little bit more respectful in general, so that way they learn that and they're not always taught that, oh, I'm just a person and an item that deserves to be pushed out of a place. So again, just wanting to learn more about how we are going to support the children in a manner that is humane.
Yeah. So, Ms. Pilot, I appreciate your question. I'll try and respond to that. I think it's very nuanced. I think you know, some of the behavior that we've seen is, you know, just butt wild, as my mother would say. And you know, I do think we need to hold you know, our youth more accountable for their actions. At the same token, I agree with you. I think that there isn't enough to do for kids. You know, when I was growing up, I was telling folks, you know, we had Meadows, which was like a, you know, a club for young people. We had dances, we had, you know, places to go. So I do think that, you know, we owe this generation those types of opportunities and more. I don't think that that should be an excuse for their behavior. So I think we should do both. We need to have more opportunities. You know, tomorrow during a committee and city council, we're going to talk about, you know, some of the things we're doing with Chicago Public Schools, with the Park District, to make sure that our youth have more opportunities. So I will agree with you that they don't. I will, you know, also agree that, you know, we need to model some of those behaviors, but I will say that we absolutely need to hold them accountable or they will continue to have those behaviors. Young people need boundaries. They need to know, you know, what those boundaries are. That's just part of growing up. You know, we all had them and they need to have them as well. And so we need to absolutely hold them accountable, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to offer some of these support systems that we know that we all had. You know, the parks were very strong growing up, you know, the after school programs and just the things to do. I can't tell you how I felt like I was grown, you know, it was a club with no alcohol, but we need to have those types of experiences for our young kids so they can learn in a safe space how to become an adult. So I think that that's something that we as a society are not doing as well anymore. So we do need to do that, but we absolutely need to also hold them accountable like we did growing up. You know, I come from the South where you can get spanked before you got home and then you got to spank it when you got home. And, you know, there's just not that, you know, holding our young people accountable for how they talk to people, how they respond to people. how they talk back to police and taunt them is just totally wrong these days. There's just a lack of respect. So, but I don't think that we have to have and or. I think we can do both, and teach our young people how to be productive in society. And we know that young people are gonna do some crazy things. That's just part of being young. But shooting people in a gun, there's got to be balances. So that's where we have to draw the line. But thank you for your
Yeah.
comment, Ms.
And
Pyle.
I appreciate that, and I totally agree with you 100,000%. And like you said, it is those after school matter type, initiatives that really helped keep kids off the streets. But I think also it's just like changing the narrative and how we talk about kids, because we're talking about them as if they're animals and they're not human. And I understand that if we think about a lot of these parents who are having children, they themselves may not have the capacity to parent them how they want to. So, we can't always just blame the kids for how they act. We have to think of them as a village, because that's exactly what we are. We are a community, and we need to make sure that we are also holding ourselves accountable for that. But then I also would just wonder, like, if we are understanding that building the capacity of the police force is just as important, but understanding that we also need to build the capacity of our children. So offering them to support. I know the police aren't social workers, but where are the social workers? Where are those public health and mental health workers that can be out there with police to making sure that, they are available for them in those situations? Maybe a child feels like they can't go home. So being on the street with their friends is a better place for them to be, So really just advocating for our youth more, so that way they know that we care about them and we love them, because that's something that they're missing. Like, they don't have love. They don't have
man,
respect.
can we move on?
Oh, come
We
on,
can
let's
move when I'm
let's
done,
be
but thank
respectful.
you.
Let's definitely be respectful. I definitely agree that, but I think it's a delicate balance. I think showing them how to have respect for adults is showing love. I think I'm not the only one who grew up, kind of in a single parent family where I had to take care of my young siblings and latchkey kid, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know that that's an excuse, but I do believe that there are not enough positive interactions and spaces for our young people, and that's on us to make sure. But I think the litigious society, we don't have school dances anymore because people are afraid of getting shot. But we've got to take chances. We've got to have school dances. We've got to have things so that they can learn how to be adults. So I wholeheartedly agree. And I think you would also say that they also need to be held accountable, so that, because I think that's a part of growth as well. So now we'll move on to Ms. Jennifer Prairie Shores.
Sorry about that. My apologies.
It's okay. Go ahead.
My name is Jennifer Robinson, and I'm the operations manager for Prairie Shores. And I want to go back just a bit to the permits that you spoke of. And when you folks were mentioning the boundaries, I don't recall hearing anything about 31st Street going north as it would pertain to Vernon, because we on that side of 31st and Prairie Shores do get a lot of folks who come from the beach and park in that area, who do make it difficult for our residents that do not have in-lot parking. So will that be permit parking during those hours as well?
No, ma'am, it won't. Every resident of Prairie Shores should have parking space provided by Prairie Shores. So that's something that they will have to take up with Prairie Shores management. And if you can pass that along, that would be great. We can, but that's the understanding that we got from management, that everybody in Prairie Shores has the opportunity to have parking spaces. So, no, it won't go that far. Thank you for that question. We have some on Galaxy, 5G Galaxy. And I know there were a couple people earlier who we couldn't hear. If you speak up and we can hear you, we'll definitely let you jump back in.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My comment is relatively short. I just wanted to just comment on the what to do if our young people are missing curfew or whatever, and the possibility of taking them down to the police station. That kind of makes me cringe a little bit, well, a lot, because we've had so much of that, treating our young people in a criminal way, and I would hope that we don't go, that be our go-to, because I can guarantee you that when all of those young people show up for whatever this take over the beach or whatever this thing they were calling themselves doing, I can almost guarantee you that probably 90% of those young people were good young people, if not more than that. But you always have that little small percentage that's going to cause issues and problems. But for the most part, our kids are good kids. And it can be pretty traumatic taking a kid down to the police station. And I do think it's a good idea to take them home. Now, I have lived in neighborhoods where it was predominantly white. I've lived in, where schools that were predominantly white. And I saw the way they dealt with those young people, where there was issues with drugs. The police knew about it and everything. But what they did not do was, when they did do something, they did not take them to the police station. They took them home to their mother. But the Black kids got taken down to the station. And I just don't want us to get caught into criminalizing the behaviors that we see in our Black children, because curfew is not so bad. Now, if you see a young person doing something really crazy out there that you need to go down to the police station, okay. But if you take a young person who's one of the good kids, okay, and you take them down to the police station because they miss curfew. Now, I would think, as a parent, okay, that if a cop showed up at my door with my kid, that is going to make an impact on me. I don't need to drive down to the station to get them, just by virtue of the fact that a cop showed up at my door with my son or daughter, saying that they were doing whatever it was they were doing. Well, missing curfew, that's going to make an impact on me, and I will deal with my child, so that they will have to be accountable for the fact that you did something where a cop had to drive you home, come knocking on our door. So I would just hope that our police don't get into that, because what you'll end up with is, if you don't do this right, you'll end up with an angry kid, an angry Black kid. And when they get angry, they look to group up with others who have that same anger. And so then you have a gang. Then you have, that's the same thing you saw on January 6th when they took over the Capitol. Angry people with the same anger, they grouped together and then start doing crazy stuff. So, and I just hope that we don't do that. Deal with them like they are young people, like they are youth. You have a lot of groupthink that goes on. If you you study psychology, you hear it all the time. You do things that you would normally do when you're in a group. Just good kids. So just think about that they are kids.
Yeah.
And deal with them in a way. Just don't criminalize them and treat them like criminals when they didn't do something criminal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I do want to uplift what you're saying again about kids. I don't want to rehash that. I do think that we need to uplift that. I would say some accountability is there. With curfew, they're not arresting. They are bringing to the station or taking home. I go back to my youth. I remember my brother got caught at a party, drinking, and my parents had to pick him up at the station. I mean, that was a huge deal. There was a accountability there. So we're not trying to lock kids up for that, but we are trying to kind of send a message, because I agree with the group mentality. There were 99% of those kids out there trying to have a good time, and then one or two will just go off, go left, and then that will cause 80% of them to go left. So I do agree with that, but I do think that we do need to hold our young people accountable for their actions, and parents too, because parents need to know if their kids are out past curfew, that's on them too. So, having to come
Yes,
down to
Alderman,
get your
this
kids.
Commander Harris, just to reiterate that when we take a child for curfew, we're not criminalizing it.
Right.
We are bringing them back to their home, and just like you said, their parents are accountable for them because these are minors and they are responsibility of the parents. Their actions are their parents' responsibility. And ultimately bringing a child home for curfew, our hope is that the parents will correct that behavior so that we don't have to address that in the future for more serious crimes.
And I do agree with that, the taking them home. I do.
That's absolutely what we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have Miss Rhonda next.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good evening.
I'd like to say that, police officers are for enforcing the law. And when do we start holding parents accountable for the actions of their children? If they're causing damage, why aren't these parents paying for this? If these kids are acting on the other side of the law, it's the police's job to enforce the law.
I would agree. And but I also agree that parents should be held accountable as well for minors.
Exactly. Otherwise, we're giving them rides home, and how do we send the message to someone, oh, I acted up and they gave me a ride home?
Yeah. Yeah, I spoke my piece on that earlier.
Yeah.
But thank you for that. Mr. Cannon?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Alderman, I appreciate you doing this. Commander Harris, Commander Wallace, hats off to you. I'm also work for the public. I'm not going to get into what I do, but I'm going to stop saying parenting. And I think some of us on here are not being honest. For many of our young people, we're not trying to demonize them, but we also going to say a lot of our young people don't have parenting. Parenting is a verb. Parenting is something you do. Parenting is something about you being involved. Let's put that to the side. I'm not going to get into that. I pay a certain amount of money to live where I live. So we're going to talk about some socialization right here. There's an expectation I have of security where I stay, and an expectation I have of Commander Harris and Commander Wallace. And this is not demonizing you two at all, because I know you all are parents too, and you all parenting. My issue is this. I knew some of the kids, and I know who they mothers and fathers are. You see, I didn't use the word parent. I know who they mothers and fathers are. It has to come down to something like this, Alderman King. We have to protect the citizens. We have to protect the areas. We have to protect our amenities. The only problem I have is those who are enforcing it have to be able to disperse those young people where they need to be dispersed, not running up in Prairie Shores, not running up in Lake Meadows. That's the issue. When those things happen, I'm not talking about the 80 that's good or the 90 that's good. Guess what? That 2%, 10%, 5%, they start to stand out. I'm not going to sit on here and lie. I know you're doing the best job that you can, Alderman King. And for my commanders, I know y'all hands are tied. Again, I work for the public. For those who know, they'll figure that out. At some point, we have to enforce. We have to be intentional. And sometimes we got to put a foot on some necks. Now, what that look like, it is what it is. And I'm not condoning violence. What I am saying is we have to be intentional about what we're doing. The first conversation you had, Alderman King, someone said at 2:30 in the morning, they saw young people juking. Come on, that's bananas. At 11:01, they got to be gone. They got to be gone. They got to be gone. It's a reason we pay a certain amount of money to stay where we live. That's not me being arrogant. That's not me being socialized, anything like that. There's an expectation about the place you are. And we gotta have those uncomfortable conversations, because if we don't, Alderman, we doing this thing next week.
No.
It is June 23rd. I'm watching the draft. We're gonna be doing this on July 3rd, July 13th, and July 23rd. We got to get it right now if we can. And we support you, Alderman and Commanders. We support you, and we know you all are in a very difficult situation. Our firemen, our teachers, we all trying to fight the same battle. But some facts are facts. I don't need nobody run up into my crib. I don't need nobody run up in the Prairie Shores. I need them going to the bus stop and being with the person that they live under their roof. You all have a good one.
Appreciate you, Mr. Cannon.
Yes.
Ms. Henderson Mason.
Oh, come on, I gotta get in here.
Hi, how are you? I guess, part of the accountability I'd like to see is I want to know actually whether the crimes, and I say crimes because this isn't the first time. I would say that's probably the 5th time, maybe even 6th time that there's been a shooting in our community, and a few murders, whether they've been solved or not, or whether there are strong leads, because I feel like part of why this continues to happen over and over is no one is being charged with the crime. Can any of the commanders speak to that? And then, and maybe they have, but I don't know. This is a difficult situation. I hear everybody because I got 2 teenage boys, and I worry that they are over policed, but I also recognize the need to have a police presence to deter those who are intent on doing wrong. And the curfew thing is a challenge, because I've actually seen more bad behavior during the middle of the day. Just as much, I won't say more, but just as much during the middle of the day as at the end of the day. So it's the presence needs to be constant, honestly, and not just when people are coming off of the beach. So.
All right. So the next person we'll have speak.
Well, I think the commanders, I think she wants a response.
Hey, this is Commander Wallace. So our area violent crimes detectives, of course, when a violent crime happens, that is then passed on to them. They do all the follow-up investigation. I don't have the current status of the cases that you're referring to. I am aware of how many we've had in the past, but we will get that information and we can pass it along to the Alderman's office, and they can pass it along to you. And in regards to more presence, that we discussed that earlier. That's our plan, to have more presence, all day, and to have a ramp up more presence, especially during the peak hours.
I believe someone was killed in or near the park about a year ago, and maybe even about 3 or 4 years ago, there was someone who was killed in the park, who came off the drive and was being chased and was killed there.
Okay, we'll get all the cases and we'll get the information to the Alderman.
Thank you for that. I will echo, I know clearance rates are an issue. And so, just as we need to hold, our youth and anybody who is, not abiding by the law accountable, we also need to make sure that we solve, more crimes. I agree. I think that leads to more emboldens, more criminals. So I think that's something we're working on with the police department now. I think there's a lot of nuance to that as well. I think, you know, police are called on to do everything else that we've failed in society. It's, you know, like teachers are, you know, two professions, I think, that we call on to do way too much. And so I think we need to balance that with some reality, and have police do what they're trained to do, and you know, take some of the social service issues off them, some of the mental health issues off them, and have, you know, those professionals do that. But to your point, I do think clearance rates are an issue. That's a whole nother Zoom conversation. But thank you for your comments, Mr. Monroe. Or Miss Lena, are you back? I see you there.
Yes. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
there you go. Yes, please go.
Hi, how
I'm
you
sorry,
doing?
you've been waiting patiently.
Yes. How you doing? My name is Abilena Kim. I live in building 841 on East 32nd Street here in Lake Meadows. The other night, I witnessed those teens. The police was pushing them forward, you know, walking them from the park on 31st down to King Drive. And I woke up to it because it was the sirens and everything going on. So I just kind of knew that it was, you know, them trying to make them leave the area. However, once they got them to King Drive and 31st, they took a left and came to 32nd, which ended up in front of our building 8, where they just started jumping on everybody's cars. They came to the building, and that's why I alerted my Lake Meadow team to come over here because they was coming to the building. And at that time, I'm like, it was a lot of them. The police have tried their best to do, but there was so many of them that they couldn't have did too much or nothing with them anyway, but try to force them out the area, which they just came around, looped back around, and ended up on the parking lot, going right back to 31st and over to Rose again, where they went to. And it's like, it's constant, like wake up to gunshots. And we do, at least I know a lot of us work. And to wake up to all of that during the night, it's something because it's like, I guess last year we didn't have that. It was real peaceful, but now they out and about. I understand they need to go somewhere and do some things. But like I say, 12, some 11, some 12, some hours at night, I'm not understanding why they're outside that late. And where are the parents for those children? Because our witness for kids, those are some children, like little young adults, like high school kind of kids, or just got out of high school kids. And the police can do nothing with them. I looked out my window and witnessed everything they was doing, besides the other ones in their cars with all of them riding on top of the car, speed down burning. And they also hit somebody's car back there and sped off and left the scene. So someone's car got hit back then burning. And it's still there. I believe it's still there. And that's what woke me up. So I'm like, what are they doing? And so I'm thinking they had gotten out the area. No, they just looped around and came to our building, back on our parking lot once again. It's just something they just constantly starting to do now. And the police have their hands filled with them because they don't listen to nothing they're saying. They say forget them. They say all kind of things. And once somebody come out that door of the building, they come in. And that's why I'm like, that's dangerous to me. And it's scary because if we're going out and coming in all times of night from work, no one want to encounter a crowd like that because I work around the crowd as well. And that's so terrifying because you can't do nothing with a crowd like that. It's like a stampede and it's scary. And those children, really, those ones I witnessed, they don't care. They was twerking, they love music up loud, whatever, walking and jumping on people's cars and hoods. They did not care about nothing the police tried to do or try to get them with this area, as well as Lake Meadow team as well. They didn't care. And that's what we're dealing with here.
No,
And
I
it's
agree.
real terrifying.
There's a total lack of respect for authority or anything, and that's where it becomes very nuanced and, like I said, difficult for our officers to respond to things like that, especially in this climate. So that's why I think, you know, we do need to hold them accountable and make sure that they understand, you know, that respect for authority is important. You know, I think that's layered with a lot of different things, but you know, we've got to get back to making sure that happens. I'll allow the commanders to respond to anything that they may respond to. I will have to also let Mr. Butler handle the next couple questions. But thank you, Ms. Lena, for your weighing in.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So the next two questions we have, and then this will be the end of the meeting. We have Mr. Mel Monroe.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of get back to, first of all, thanks again. As always, Alderman King, you've been gracious and responsive to us here at Lake Meadows, always, to our Block Club, to our association, and I thank you. Every time we call on you, you're always there. And both commanders, especially Commander Harris, was captain, now commander. Thank you and congratulations. And actually your whole team, Alderman and Prentice. So we're so thankful for you always being responsive to us. We're kind of freaked out over here because what you're hearing from everyone, at least bits and pieces, we kind of got off track in some ways. We wanted to call this meeting because you've talked a lot, the commanders have talked a lot about the parking lots and the beach. We want to focus in on coming off of 31st Street on roads, what you're calling Cottage Grove, our block club, and really that whole strip. And while we've been able to achieve seasonal parking, we've not addressed a number of things. You've heard people talk about the twerking. It's been all over the place. It's not just, you've heard people talk about Prairie Shores and up and down. I mean, there's a lot of people, and it's just not one night, it's a lot of nights. We hear, for some reason, I get a lot of emails, a lot of notes and stuff like that. You could not imagine what we get and see all the time. So we really need the police more visible down our streets. And that's the reason we started out by thinking about, we really want you to think about both commanders and also aldermen, to think about maybe an auxiliary or think about some type of creative options, because we know you guys are overloaded, but thinking about whatever the mayor is thinking about, some auxiliary police force or something to address these quality of life issues, because it doesn't sound like you have the resources. We'll have the resources to come in off of 31st Street and off of the beach to address these quality of life issues. For instance, there needs to be more structure. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Tom Snooks over at the Park Church says, just close the gates to keep people from driving into the parks at Lake Meadows. And you'd be surprised at how much peace we've had in the last 30 days with not having people pull into the park and loud music and all of that, just in closing the parks down and being more, to allow for more structure. You have to have rules and regulations. In addition to that, we've added more waste baskets, 8 waste baskets on roads, and people use the waste baskets just by having waste baskets, structure. So I want to point out also, we need to have ticket aid, people that give tickets. We've never seen people give tickets. Now people are parked illegally for the first 2 blocks on roads. We've never seen ticket agents. So commanders, you've got to get ticket agents, people, I don't know what they're called, on foot giving tickets. So people are hanging out in cars and then we never see them giving tickets. And I'm sure there's a lot of illegal parkings and you know, people that don't have the proper stickers. So enforce that, because it's going to help with the quality of life. So it addresses a lot of these things that we're talking about here. I know you're over on the parking lots. We saw them last night. My wife and I was happy to see what's going on, but they were giving tickets. Actually, police, first time in a year and a half we've been here, that the police were giving tickets over that at the parking lot over there. First time in a year and a half at the lot over there. Keep doing it, because it's going to keep people accountable. We're talking about structure. So we're talking about structure here. If the police will do their jobs and be aggressive and assertive about it, then it helps everybody. And to be consider all these other creative things like auxiliary police, because we know you don't have the resources, because these kids are going to overwhelm it. There's a trend of people coming over, not all the kids, to the point, not all kids want to be bad. They want something to do. There's not a lot going on in the neighborhood, so they want to get to the park. We get it. They want to get to the lake. We get it. And when the park is closed, they're converging on us here
at Lake Meadows
In the
and the residential area. So, you know, you have no idea what we're dealing with over here. So we need you to come in and be visible and to do everything you can and send your resources over there to do this. So we need the structure, write tickets, have the quality of life issues. That's really helpful for us because it relieves us of some of the burdens of calling the police all the time. It really is a hassle for us. It's stressful. It's going to cut down a lot of stuff. These kids just want to hang out. And you've heard the bits and pieces all along. So structure. These quality of life issues, writing tickets, making people move on, putting the light, shining a light on people, having people move on. You need to drive through the park. Drive down roads and be visible. When the park is closing, have people keep moving. That helps us a lot. So please come off of 31st Street, commanders. We're asking you to do that. Helps us a lot. 50% of our people are seniors. I'm not trying to get into young dude's face. I ain't trying to do that. I can fight a little bit, but those days are over. So we're not trying to do that. Really help us. And a lot of, most of us live by the lake because we want to walk every day. We can't do that anymore. It's not fun. There's nothing fun about this during the daytime and in the evening. So my wife and I want to be able to enjoy our lakefront. We can't do that now with what's happening now. So we need the help of the police. And all of them, you've been brilliant about putting these commanders before us and allowing us to be able to articulate our stress, our strain. And we want to be able to make our neighborhood, give us back our neighborhood. And we're at that place now. We don't want to be here next year. Now, last thing I want to say, we want to be creative here. Now, these kids and young people, somebody touched on this earlier in some way. The brother said it earlier. These kids don't have a lot to do. So maybe when we look at the beach, we need to come up with some creative things at the beach. We want to do some creative things in the parks, so have kids, so these young people can have things to do in the park, checkers and games and things like that. Because our parks, I believe, and our beaches are passive. We need to have some things for them to do on our bridges going south as well. These bridges that we've opened up for them, we need to have some cool things for these kids to do so they're not passive and not walking around like zombies. So let's think creatively. We can do this. We really can. And all of them, you have that leadership capability within you, within your staff, along with your chief of staff. And the commanders, you have good young commanders here, and you have a community here that wants to work with you. So, end of my story. Thank you.
Mr. Moreau, thank you for your comments. Thank you so much. We have one last question for the evening. I believe we have, and forgive me if I don't pronounce it incorrectly. Janae?
Oh, that's okay. It's Agina. That's fine.
Agina, I apologize for that.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
okay. Thank you all for the time this evening. I've been a resident of Lake Meadows for 7 years or more, basically. So I have seen a lot of change in the neighborhood and the community. And I was wondering, grappling with what is that change? What has changed? Because certainly there's been a shift with the activity that we've been seeing. But that's a whole nother question, big picture. I've heard a lot of information this evening, so I just kind of wanted to wrap my mind around the plan and kind of summarize, what are the action steps that are going to be taken. So it sounds like the officers are planning to, be more visible, disperse themselves among the streets, it sounds like, because I do know the night of the shooting, when I came off of Lakeshore Drive, there were quite a few officers, but they were all grouped on 31st and Lakeshore Drive. And then when I went a block down, I didn't see any officers at that dark vacant lot where all those people congregated and the shooting actually happened. So I suppose you live and you learn, and then I did notice, since the time of the shooting in the evening, I do see blue lights or officers posted along the street there. So I'm assuming that's part of the plan to be dispersed more so throughout the neighborhood. My concern is also, what is the plan for clearing the grounds, especially coming up with like the July 4th holiday? I do know last year there were youth standing over the parking lot shooting fireworks over the cars and vehicles all night long. So that's something that I hope and pray doesn't happen this particular year. Maybe that won't be the case if you're going to actually have patrols, which I'm now seeing. I have not seen patrols throughout our neighborhood. I have not. not until more recently when we had the shooting. So, you know, I'm glad that maybe, you know, you all are actually thinking of something to do to stop these issues. So like I said, I'm hearing, you know, to clear the ground, you're gonna have more presence and maybe disperse the police. But I do agree with Mr. Monroe with being more creative, maybe street closures, barricades, you know, maybe exploring those options, more ticketing, more towing, more ticketing, towing. I feel like maybe those are action steps that could be taken. You know, I don't know what the commander's thoughts are on that.
So yes, a lot of what you spoke of, we are doing with the ticketing, the towing, the presence, with audio warnings at the beach about closures coming into play, using curfew as a tool, all those things to keep our beachgoers safe and get everybody out of the beach in a safe manner, and not just disperse them to the neighborhoods, but have them go back home so they can come out and enjoy the next day.
Okay.
Mr. McGee, I'll allow you to have the last question, then we have to close the meeting. Ms. McGee?
One thing I've noticed in this whole conversation, I've been kind of quiet and being thoughtful about it. The issue isn't our neighborhood. The issue is what comes to our neighborhood. And we need to not just say what's in our neighborhood. The question is, how do we branch out? Because what's happened is people have discovered this community is peaceable.
It's what? Peaceable.
It's accessible. And the biggest issue is, other than the shootings, it's safe.
Right.
And so they're now coming into an area that is safe, even though there are incidents, but it's because the area is safe. Where are the people coming from that need to have safety in their own community where they don't want to come to this community? They come here because it's safe. And to the commanders, both of them, if you look at our stats of crime overall, we don't have a lot of crime compared to the city at large. So even though we're upset, and we should be upset, the solutions are not us here. The question is, how do we now get solutions that force young people not to come to this area because they have a resource where they live? The issue is we have resource, they don't have a resource where they live, so they come here and then it's a convergence of different communities. Even though I can be hard on the police, but the reality is when you got all those kind of people out there, and if there's mob action, man, the police you gotta pick your battles when there's a bunch of folk, because you're not trying to make sure somebody doesn't lose their life. But that whole shooting incident.
And you got a note down there?
Yes.
The shooting incident, what ended up happening when they all left the beach that day, they didn't trash a gas station on 31st and Michigan. Okay? And so the solution isn't us trying to get with things only in our neighborhood. It's other neighborhoods where kids are coming from and they don't have resources.
Ms. McGee, with that comment, we're going to close the meeting. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll make this recording available on the website tomorrow morning so you can share with neighbors that may not be in attendance. It'll also be in our weekly newsletter. Once again, thank you for coming out this evening, and we'll see you soon in the future.